talk therapy and conscious mind is very important, but I teach it a very different way, just the conscious mind. I teach it a different way, meaning I give you a toolbox. It's a toolbox to interrupt patterns in the moment, to be able to step into exact peak states or alter egos in that moment, to be able to change your focus in that moment, the emotion in that moment, to be able to switch on right there in that moment. That's what the conscious mind's for. So when the pressures come, or you're in a meeting or an IPO or doing a merger or even just launching a concept, the internal dialogue, your focus, those are the things that we have to navigate when you're under extreme pressure. Okay, so that's the difference between what I do and what other people do in the conscious bit of your brain. The unconscious mind, that's the secret sauce, right? That really, really is. It's the secret sauce to everything.
Welcome to the Mindset by Design podcast with your host, the expert Andy Murphy, where you will learn the tips, tricks, and strategies he teaches his world-class clients to give you the skills to dominate any business.
What's going on, Mindset by Design crew, and welcome to episode 329. Hope you're amazing, as always. Always say it, always mean it. And I really hope life is good. I really do. Today's episode, I'm just going to get straight into it. This is something I've been interviewed on a lot of podcasts over the years. A lot, you know what I mean? Some of the biggest podcasts in the world. And it's always interesting. It's, you know, it's you vibe with different people. Do you know what it's like, right? Not everyone vibes with me. Not everyone vibes with somebody else. It's just life. There's nearly 8 billion people in the world, so it's all good, you know? It's all good. But I got connected with a gentleman not so long ago, and I've kind of dropped a few hints. And if you follow me on social media, in any of the platforms, Andy Murphy Mindset, yeah, you'll find me. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook group, whatever it is, right? Then you'll have seen some really cool clips, right, of me being interviewed by a gentleman called Ryan Alford. Podcast is called The Rad Cast. Yeah, it's one of the top, I think it's top 24 in the world in business. Guy's awesome, love him. Me and him connected really, really well, and we're building something special, building a mastermind. And it's more than a mastermind. He's one of the top marketers in the world, and I don't mean one of these people who've just done a course and then set up an agency. No, he's a genuine, talented, old school marketer, done this for 20 years, and he's been right through the corporate, helping the NFL, Verizon, and companies like that. So when you're classically trained in marketing, or classically trained in everything, or anything, it's very, very different to somebody who you're just hiring from ClickFunnels group on Facebook, right? Big difference. So our mission is to radically get the radical, yeah, you get it. So radically change the industry, to actually give the power back in entrepreneurs' hands, because there's so much BS out there in the world, and it drives me crazy. And you've heard me rant on about this many, many times, but it drives me crazy for one reason. Well, there's a coaching industry that's appeared because marketers have trained people how to be coaches, or I should say market themselves as coaches. And it completely drives me crazy. It drives Ryan crazy, and we're here to show you a different way. I'm going to show you very technical ways to change your neurology, your brain patterns, to think, feel, and act a very different way at your highest level. And the thing is, every time Ryan is going to take you and show you marketing and actually how to use social media as massive brand exposure, then what you're going to be able to do is have more influence. And that influence means that you can help more people. And what happens is, once you've got this skill set, which he's going to show you, you're going to hit ceilings. It's just how it is. It doesn't matter if you're earning $100 million this year. Everybody hits ceilings. And what that is that's mental boundaries. So we're going to show you personally. I'm going to rewrite or update that software in your brain and give you techniques and tools that I've taught to thousands of people and some of the best in the world. And a lot of people that you've probably seen online. And combination of us is gold. It's something very, very special, and we're on a mission for this. So we're putting this together right now, and yeah, I'm pumped about it. I really, really am. So this interview that I'm going to show you today, I don't show you many interviews that I go on, right? No, I don't. I interview some people. I talk on my podcast, but I don't really share interviews that get done about me. You know what I mean? So today is just that. Obviously, I'm not going to give you the full interview because that's on the Rad Cast, and you can definitely go and check that out. I'm going to put the links in the show notes. But what I want you to be able to do is really just see the difference in what you're going to be a part of when you can join this mastermind. If we even call it a mastermind, it's going to be launched in X amount of weeks, and we're playing around with different concepts, different names. But at the end of the day, you're going to be a part of something really, really special that I don't really believe that is in the industry. And I've looked, I know all these guys, I know all these people, and everyone talks about mindset, right? But they don't really have a clue what they're doing. They're not scientifically designing and changing and updating the software in people's brains. They're not. It's be positive, all of this nonsense. And that's fine, but it doesn't help when you're under intense pressure to perform, right? It doesn't work like that. So our combination is going to be absolutely gold, and 100% you're going to want to be a part of it. You just are. You might as well go and listen to this episode, and you might as well go and check the Rad Cast out with Ryan Alford, right? You might as well get used to him. And this interview is really cool. I had so much fun, and as I say, this is the beginning. Do you know what I mean? This is where we first connected, and we really, really got on well. And there's something badass happening. So you're definitely going to want to be a part of it, especially if you're wanting to scale your business from 6 to 7 figures. I was going to say 5 to 6, but definitely can do that. But what we're going to focus on is moving people from 6 figures to 7 figures every year. So if you are in that category and you're looking for, it actually works, then this is going to be it. It really, really is. And so I want to share this interview with you, and make sure that you're heading over to his podcast too. And speaking of heading over to stuff, are you heading over to my social media? Oh yeah, are you hanging out with me on Instagram yet? Andy Murphy Mindset. Do you see that theme? You see that theme? Andy Murphy Mindset on Instagram, LinkedIn, the Facebook group. Facebook group's got over 3,000 people in it. Come and hang out. What else? Well, you can find me anywhere, but I just really want you to connect with me so I can help you. That's all this is about. And speaking of helping you, hit those show notes up and head over to andymurphy.online. And what can you find? Well, you can grab yourself 2 tools that are free. They're ready to rock and roll, and they're going to be a game changer for you. If you want to learn all about state changing, peak states, brain waves, and how to really get total mental control, then you can do that through a badass ebook that I created. You just want to go and get it. You do. And while you're there, go and get your mornings dialed in. The mornings are where we must take control of our nervous system and brain. Being an entrepreneur, we're under constant high pressure, constant intense pressure to always accelerate, step into the unknown, put ourselves in situation. Entrepreneurship is a roller coaster, right? The stability in general isn't there. And that's what I'm going to solve for you, is that mental stability first thing in the morning. You can go get it. It's called the Fire Mind Morning Audio. Yes, I'm going to light up that software in your brain and program you to be a badass every single day. Sound good? Good. So you need to go over and hang out with me, connect to all of those things, because we've got so much other things coming. You know what's coming, the Genius Trader. It's complete, by the way. It's getting ready to get launched. So we've got the Genius Trader. If you're in crypto, Forex, stocks, options, I gotcha. This is going to take you to a whole new level. If you're an entrepreneur and you're heading towards that dream level income and you just want to be able to think like the highest version of you, well, guess what? That's the 8-Figure Thinker Mental Training Academy. It's badass. That's coming. What else we got? Well, we've got what's happening with Ryan. Boom. I'm so pumped about that. So all of this is about getting stability in your mind, stability in your marketing, stability in your leads, stability in your income, stability in your growth strategy, right? Whatever it is, we're going to give you that stability. So yeah, shall I shut up? I think I should shut up and let you listen to this interview, right? Because you're going to be listening to more of me today. So I want you to put your thinking cap on, get your notepad and pen, and see really and truly why what I do is radically different to what is generally out there. And if you want to be able to know the secrets and strategies and techniques and tools that I teach to 7, 8, 9-figure entrepreneurs, then yeah, you probably just want to listen and pay attention. So you might want to listen to this a few times because I know it's going to give you an aha. I know it's going to give you a game-changing perspective on your whole business and life. And yeah, let's just jump in. Let's just jump in. And I will see you at the end of the show. Enjoy.
What gave you that opportunity?
Martial arts. It really was martial arts. Yeah, I've done martial arts since I was like 9 years old. Like I say, school genuinely taught me nothing. Probably taught me to read and write, and I've got a bit of dyslexia, so I didn't do that very well. But martial arts taught me everything. And I sit you in there going, tell me about it. Why are you depressed? Why? What happened in all of your life to be depressed? What's going on right now to be depressed? Depressed. When you start to understand everything in your life, internally and externally, is an anchor or a trigger. Now, a trigger sounds negative, but a trigger could be also positive. Whether that Steve Jobs has been anchored right through the whole of Apple products, so he made everybody think that they were futuristic, cool, you know what I mean, and was intelligent.
Hardest part of ending is starting again.
You're listening to the Rad Cast. If it's radical, we cover it. Here's your host, Ryan Alford.
Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to the latest edition of the Rad Cast. Hey man, we're getting brainy today. We're getting mental with my friend Andy Murphy. He is I've got Forbes up here. I've got expert. He is a mental performance coach, trainer, expert extraordinaire. Andy, man, welcome to the show.
Hey, Ryan, man. I like that intro, buddy. I like it. I haven't got a cool accent like you, mate. You know, I've got this weird one. But hey, that's all right.
We've got the accents covered today. I've got the South Carolina kid, accent covered. You've got, whatever your blend has become. I don't know. Where is home? What's home originally? Where are you originally from?
Yeah, it's probably a good question, mate. I've been away 19 years now, but I originally from Liverpool in the UK. Yeah, but I got a long story and we're sure we'll get into it, but I lived in Australia, New Zealand, Bali, California, Florida, Latin America, and I still keep going.
I've been studying your stuff, but I can't say because I really just don't care. Like, I don't care where someone's from. I care what they're about, but like, I always heard a little bit of the Irish or something. Is that just
yeah, my last name's Murphy.
Yeah, that
and
too.
Liverpool and Ireland's real connected. So nice work, man. Nice work.
Yeah, I'm just figuring it all out here as we go. But Andy, I do want to set things up. Let's tee things up for everyone. Let's talk about your background. Let's talk about what you do with mental performance training and all that. But let's give everyone the ones and twos on, what got you into this. I've been doing it for almost 20 years or right at 20 years, but let's start there, man.
Yeah, I'm getting old, mate.
Me too.
I get it. It's funny, man. I left the UK when I was 24 years old, and I was working in computers at the time. Wasn't my thing, but I knew I could travel, and I knew I could earn decent money. And basically, I just moved to Australia, Sydney. Didn't know anyone, didn't have a job, just arrived. And somehow I found NLP and sales. That's how it all began, man. And that's how I really trained my brain. And I didn't know anything about this stuff, man. Like, I come from the most working class background you can imagine. It's like my dad's an electrician, my mom's a nurse. You know, that was my world. As basic as you can imagine. And when I got there, it really started to change my view of the world. And I became, within 6 months, we were selling investment real estate. I become the top guy in the country for the company. And then we got headhunted to New Zealand and worked with investment real estate. And again, broke every record and headhunted to multiple countries, blah, blah, blah. Was one of the top guys in the country. And then 25, 26 years old, got a little bored, as you do, and decided to connect with someone, and we were putting together to build a resort in Fiji. So I was 26, and we took that over to Dubai, selling it down next to the Palms, Dubai land. It was crazy to go back. I went back a few years ago, like the Burj Khalifa, the tallest building in the world. It was all off the plan back then. It was crazy. And then we came back to New Zealand. Everything was going great. But 2007, 2008 happened. Right, you got it. Business partner thought it was an awesome idea to steal all my money, send me into bankruptcy, watch me go through a nervous breakdown, watch me lose everything, and lied to me for like 2 years. So I went from having perceived everything, right? It means nothing, but perceived everything, to basically living and training in an MMA gym. That's literally what I was doing. And I remember the day, man. I remember the day. It was... I'd seen over 2,500 people at that stage. I used to work with sales training, setting departments, or working with CEOs, running my own stuff. And then I remember sitting and looking out that window, and my 5 Series BM, which I thought was really important, was getting taken away from me. And I had to have a little chat with myself. And I was like, okay, Andy, you know you're good at what you do. So now what? You know? And here's a key statement for everyone listening, and it came through to me real clear back in the day. It was like, this is just where you are. It's not who you are. And that made me really make a different decision. It was huge. And I turned down a job in Hong Kong, actually, to work for another real estate development because, well, actually, to cut a long story short, I borrowed money instead of paying rent and food and went to LA. And I went to LA for 5 days for a course, flew back to New Zealand, left within 6 weeks. And that took me to Los Angeles. And I started working with professional athletes and fighters, which took me into working with entrepreneurs and Hollywood producers and people like that, and world champion athletes, and yes, CEOs and royalty and everyone else you can imagine. And I was working with a lot of trauma back then too, which was interesting. And then I stopped working with all of that world because I just wanted to focus on working with entrepreneurs and founders. And the reason is, they're all crazy. I'm crazy. We're all crazy, right? So all of that bag of things that I was working individually with people, no, let's just focus on entrepreneurs because, yeah, I believe personally they're the people that are going to change the economy in the world. But also it's like, no, we're all wild. So I like that. You know what I mean? So that was 14, 15 years ago. So I've been away 19 years. And yeah, I've just been doing my thing since then. You know what I mean? Helping people. I've helped probably over 10,000 people personally, podcast and all the rest of it, you know?
What, backing up to when you went to LA, what afforded you the opportunity, whether you were enjoying it or a superficial or whatever, working with celebrities and sports athletes and all that, what gave you that opportunity?
Martial arts.
Oh, really?
It really was martial arts. Yeah, I've done martial arts since I was like 9 years old. So, and I was at a good level. So I could go around and then network. And the networking meant I was working with a lot of Krav Maga guys. I don't know if you've ever heard of that martial arts. They teach LAPD, FBI, and I was around the top guys somehow in LA, right? And they were connected to Hollywood and they had a big outreach. So I was working with the top guys. I actually helped one of the guys get his black belt, who was Charlie Sheen's bodyguard at the time. And the rest is history. So that was really it. So once they saw like I could train, I was a normal guy, and then they'd be very interested in what I did when they listened to me. And from there, that just opened door after door after door. But more importantly, I just hustled, mate. I was like, I literally would drive from LA to San Diego to Orange County to LA in the same day just to go and buy coffee for somebody or buy lunch for somebody. You know what I mean? And I didn't have any money at the time, but it didn't matter. I just wanted to connect with awesome people. And it was just this pull inside of me to do it. And it just kept going.
Yeah, I love it. Isn't it so funny, when you get down to the basics, like we all want to learn the secret sauce. And I literally talked about this yesterday. The secret sauce is discipline and just activity, like, and repeatability and those kind of things. It's like we all want the lessons, and there are important things, which we're going to get into NLP and all that stuff, because there is some tricks to the trade. But at the end of the day, it's like activity and execution are everything.
in everything. I always say this, man, we're talking about martial arts. It's like I say school genuinely taught me nothing. Probably taught me to read and write, and I've got a bit of dyslexia, so I didn't do that very well. But martial arts taught me everything. It taught me to read people. It taught me to do pattern recognition. It taught me to step into scenarios where there's 1,000+ people watching you and you might get hurt, but you were able to perform. It taught me to be confident. It taught me to push past boundaries mentally and physically. It taught me to be a mentor. It taught me to be a mentee. And I really, because it's such a young age, I really believe that really built the foundation, the imprint of my brain. And that's all I wanted to do. So I took that discipline, because I was on the junior under 21s England squad at the time when I was young. So it's like I just took that discipline and drive and worked out. No one taught me. I just worked out that you could do that in every area of life. You know what I mean? And then it becomes simple. And the crazy thing is, there's always a steep learning curve. In anything you're learning, whether it's digital marketing, whether it's the stuff we're going to talk about today, or whether it's just being happy, man. It's like there's a steep learning curve. And that learning curve, most people stop because the pain or the pressure or the overwhelm comes. But understanding that's the same with any skill. You just got to work your ass off at the start. And then that learning curve, you'll get to a point where suddenly you become kind of an unconscious competent. It becomes kind of automatic. And from that view of the world, then you can make very different decisions. And that's really kind of the bones of everything.
Yeah. Change happens where discomfort starts.
It's a classic saying, mate, and it's so true, right?
My trainer this morning was literally, like, you were really getting it this morning. Like, I could see it changing because, like, you were fucking so, like, tired, like, but you were pushing through it. I'm like, I don't know what it was, but that's what he says all the time. Change happens. Change of the muscle, change of the mind, change of anything happens in discomfort. But talking with Andy Murphy, mental performance coach. So, Andy, I want to talk about NLP. What got you into it? You've teed up a little bit. I think I've heard some teasings of what got you into it. I think you were already wired for a lot of this. But let's talk about what NLP is and how all that works.
Sure, mate. That was my foundation. I do a lot of other things but that was a real solid foundation. And it's like the operating system for the brain, right? And the mind. That's really what NLP is. And people really don't understand what it is. And I've taken it to specifically performance, specifically for business these days. And I've added neuroscience and all my experience. So I've developed it into my own thing. But NLP is genuinely like, it's a beautiful thing, and everybody should have at least the basics of it because it teaches you how to be a mechanic of your own brain and mind. And the challenge is with today's world, and then we'll get into explaining it, but the challenge is today's world, everyone's a tactician. And everybody thinks about hitting that next level or hitting the next level of income and money or whatever they want. And they'll go and they'll learn the logical tactics. And that's what's sold really in online and marketing and everything. It's about we tweak that, we do that, it gets that. All of that is 100% true. But if your brain isn't wired to step into the unknown, like your brain and nervous system isn't wired to step into the unknown, we're going to have a reaction to it. So we're not going to get the acceleration, the growth, and the speed that we really truly can if we understand there's two parts of the equation, right? The skill set and then the mindset. But people think mindset it's an hysterical thing. They think mindset's just about like be positive, be this, be that. Yeah, kinda. It's not. It's very technical. And let me explain. So the way I describe this, we have our conscious mind and we have our unconscious mind, okay? So understand those two things first of all, and I'll explain them both. But the first thing we've got to understand is our brain works just like a muscle. That's the first thing people have got to understand, right? Whether you're pumping what you don't want or what you do want, the muscle builds. The synapse connections connect and the chemicals become a habit, right? So we have a conscious mind. The challenge is psychologists, therapists, and normal coaches only deal in the conscious mind. That's the bit of the mind that me and you are talking to back into right now, Ryan, right? If I say, look at this hand, you look at this hand, right? We're consciously aware of the hand now, right? But that's talk therapy. The challenge with talk therapy is it's great to unlock and get everything out. But then what, right? If we understand the brain is like a muscle, well, what do normal therapists, coaches, and psychologists do? They take you back to root causes. Now, you've got to go back to root causes, you do, and I'm all about that. But the challenge becomes, if we understand this as a muscle, and I take you back to a trauma or a past or a pain point, and I sit you in there going, tell me about it. Why are you depressed? Why? What happened in all of your life to be depressed? What's going on right now to be depressed? Depressed. All the imagery in your head, the focus, the internal dialogue, how you value yourself, your perspective of the world, your belief system is all genuinely then focused on what? That problem. How's the muscle? The muscle's pumping that problem. It becomes easier and easier to do that problem, right? Well, that's the problem with the conscious just talk therapy. So conscious talk therapy and conscious mind is very important, but I teach it a very different way, just the conscious mind. I teach it a different way, meaning I give you a toolbox. It's a toolbox to interrupt patterns in the moment, to be able to step into exact peak states or alter egos in that moment, to be able to change your focus in that moment, the emotion in that moment, to be able to switch on right there in that moment. That's what the conscious mind's for. So when the pressures come, or you're in a meeting or an IPO or doing a merger or even just launching a concept, the internal dialogue, your focus, those are the things that we have to navigate when you're under extreme pressure. Okay? So that's the difference between what I do and what other people do in the conscious bit of your brain. The unconscious mind, that's the secret sauce, right? That really, really is. It's the secret sauce to everything. And let me explain my definition around this, and I've said this for a long time, right? But your unconscious mind, it's like the software that plays in the background of your head. That's like the software that plays in the background of a computer. What the hell does that mean? It means that the software plays automatically, it gets outdated, and it makes you think, feel, and act a certain way. That's what a computer does. That's what your brain does. There is no difference, right? So it's automatic, it performs a certain way, and it gets outdated. So when we start to understand that, life isn't just linear. It goes in constant ups and downs and curves, right? So we move in chapters. We move in stages. So what I do well, first of all, understand that software, right? So if we looked at two different versions of you, right? We have the old version and the new version. Both of them are awesome, Ryan. I'm sure you're a badass in the past, and you're sure you're going to be a badass in the future, mate.
I don't know about that. We'll see. I'm always evolving. There's never a finish line.
Never a finish line, mate. There never is. And so that old version of you, or anybody, right? They have a certain view of the world, a certain perspective that's been built up from everything that's happened in the past. The highs, the lows, the ups, the downs, the highs, right? So you're seeing the world as you are now. Certain beliefs, certain views, certain language, certain focus, certain expectations, about the future, money, the scalability of the business, who you are, everything, right? All of these things can affect how we perceive the future, and even including business partners ripping you off, all of these things, right? But those things are massively important. But the challenge becomes is what we want is up here, right? It's a different thing. We all have a vision of where we're going in our life and in our business and who we're supposed to be when we arrive there. The challenge is this old version gets stuck in a little box. It does. Einstein said it best. We get boxed in by the boundary conditions of our thinking. We get stuck, right? So when somebody wants to step into the new, right, that's great. It's like when you started this podcast, for example. It's all exciting. It's new. You're all pumped up, right? Well, what happens is you step into this world-class you. What happens, this muscle isn't big, thick, and strong yet. It's not. The old version of you is big, thick, and strong, which means it's easy to do. So we step into the new, we're pumping along, and then guess what happens? Oh, shit, we get triggered, right? Oh, it's what I call a snap back. So what happens is we go like a rubber band, we snap back into that old version of us. Guess what? That muscle around that boundary gets thicker and stronger, and it gets harder to step into the new to become ourselves again. Understand that first of all. So what happens is my job and what I love to do is expand people. I love to expand founders, CEOs, whether it's co-founder communication, whether it's the vision of the company, whether it's making sure we're stress testing and keeping everyone firing like they're in the Olympics going for a gold medal as they're going through the whole stage of growth, right? Because that old version cannot see truly, they cannot see what the ultimate vision is for the business or the exit strategy. They cannot see it. They think you can, but you can't. When we switch you into this world-class you, your whole view of the world is so different. This is where we make high-level decisions. This is where we're not reacting to things. This is where we're clarity. We've removed the noise and we're in flow states constantly. Now there's systems, routines, techniques to do all of this stuff. But that's the big difference. So ultimately what we're doing is we're building this bad boy over here, this world-class. So what happens to muscles we don't use? Atrophy, right? It starts to shrink and die. And that becomes the old you. This becomes the dominant version of us now. So our view of the world is extremely different. We build the muscle so it's extremely different. Now, this version, well, guess what? You're going to hit another ceiling as you grow. Then this becomes the old and the new, and we do the process again, right? And when we start to understand that, well, there's two very different versions of us, yeah, but there's also two very different amount of chemicals and types of chemicals that are getting produced in the brain, right? There's the serotonin, the dopamine, and often with founders and entrepreneurs and CEOs, what happens is we get something called a dopamine addiction. And that dopamine addiction, dopamine, by the way, is the feel-good chemical. It's produced through novelty. Novelty can be good or bad. It doesn't matter, right? The brain wants that dopamine. So what happens is that's why entrepreneurs and salespeople and all the rest of it, they're crazy because we're constantly searching for dopamine, constantly, right? And when we start to understand that old version, as we expand and hit a ceiling, right, to expand into the new, well, guess what? If you're fearful about stepping into the new, because you might not even know you're fearful, it's where the alarm system goes off as we step into a new boundary or a new version of us. The alarm system is our fight or flight response, or amygdala, right? Fight, flight, or freeze response, right? So we've all experienced all of these things. So as we step into the new, what tends to happen is, well, it's daunting. So what happens is the alarm system goes off in the brain. Are you safe? Are you safe? Are you safe? You probably are. But your brain is telling you that you're not. And people go, I'm not afraid, Andy. I get it. You get it. But your brain's having a fear response. Okay? That's the difference, right? So what happens is as we hit the ceiling, what do people do? They flight. What does that mean? Shiny object syndrome, right? Feeling stressed, partying, doing crazy stuff, accumulating things, all to get that dopamine hit, right? But if we understand, what I do is I understand that we're all crazy, so we need to keep your dopamine hitting in your growth of your company, in your business, in your life. If we constantly create novelty and new with expansion, then what happens is this is where we create massive results for people. This is where we scale fast. This is how we move people from 5 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 plus figures. It's all because of this snapback, creating different versions of you, understanding chemicals, building the mind muscle, and that's how we get growth. I'm going on a bit of a rant.
No, I'm letting you go because it's fascinating, and I think it's very valuable for people to understand that process. I think it needed that. But I do want, I know we're not, this is not going to be an NLP training but I do want to know if you can talk about like maybe one specific activity or, technique that you do with NLP that like someone could relate to, so they know like, okay, this guy, because I think anyone listening to what you just said is nodding, because I'm sitting here nodding. Okay, that makes a lot of sense, especially I do training and other things. So like for me, it's like, I get it. I totally get it. I get it. Like, this is how I used to look, but I had to train past a certain point to make this muscle look a certain different way. And so it's the same type of thing with the brain, but like but I think I'd be fascinated to hear like, maybe one or two techniques that are part of that.
Sure. And anything, it's, I suppose a real powerful one is, we teach you pattern interrupts and state changes and something we might go into, but I just want to give something so applicable that everyone can really start looking around their life and their world right now and start to make changes. Because when we become aware of a pattern, then we can change it. If we're not aware of something, then it becomes very difficult to change it, right? But one of the key things that I really believe has changed my life through using NLP specifically is the concept of anchoring. Now, most people have heard of that term before. What does it really mean? It goes back to Pavlov's dog experiments, right? If you've ever heard of that, right? I'm sure most people have. That's anchoring,
Ringing
right?
the bell.
Yeah, you got it. Tuning fork, dog food, dog. Put the tuning fork and the dog food down enough times, the dog would salivate. Take the food away, ring the tuning fork, the dog would salivate. Right, he's onto something. I like to update it and make it more cool, right? You ever heard the tune and it takes you right back to 4 o'clock in the morning in a nightclub?
Oh yeah, yeah, I've been there.
We've all been there. That's anchoring, right? That's anchoring. That could be a good or bad experience, but it takes you to that place. When you start to understand everything in your life, internally and externally, is an anchor or a trigger. Now, a trigger sounds negative, but a trigger could be also positive. But when we understand that everything in our life is an anchor, we have to really start paying attention to what this is. So, for example, I can talk about states, but most people are aware of what a peak state is or an alter ego these days. It's a version of you. Imagine a bubble, right? A bubble of neurology or software that makes you see the world a certain way. Quick example, a professional fighter sees the world very differently when they're stepping into a ring or a cage than when he's going on a date or he's talking to his mum.
Hopefully.
Yeah, right. I hope so too, man. Or we need to have a chat with him.
He's really screwed.
Yeah, exactly, man. Exactly. But when we start to understand those are muscles, those are neurology, those are literally hats that we change, roles that we play, perspectives, right? That's a state or a peak state or an alter ego, right? So very quick explanation. So, for example, here's a classic one that people need to stop immediately. Immediately, they need to become aware of this today because this is one of the key things that damages an entrepreneur or their family and relationship. So often, right, we're in business mode, business hat. We're seeing business things, right? And we're around business people. So what happens often are brain waves nice and high. It's actually called high beta. High beta means that we are in anxiety or stress. base is what we bounce around in all day. Then we access the unconscious mind into alpha, theta, There's brainwaves. And that's really specifically what I work with a lot. But what happens is we're in work mode. Then, guess what? Most of the time, we're still thinking about work. We're driving home or coming out of our office, and then we go straight to with our family or our partner or whoever, right? And then guess what? We do the same thing again the next day, same thing again the next day, same thing again the next day. And we wonder why we're not present with whoever we're around. We're thinking about tomorrow, yesterday, or what we've got to do. We wonder why we get into arguments. We wonder why we can be intense or aggressive, right? We wonder, right? Well, it's not really wondering. It's because that state or that version of you starts to get wired to your home life. This is anchoring, connecting, right? So what happens is you only have to start thinking about your home life to start feeling stressed. This becomes a constant pattern of entrepreneurs. So when we start to understand we can change these states, then that means now we're suddenly in a home version of us. It means we can close the chapter for the day. And it doesn't matter what level you're playing at in business. I see this with people running $300 million businesses. It's the same thing, right? They're constantly switched on. It never stops, right? And I remember having a conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I was actually, their partner was there as well, the girlfriend. And the girlfriend just literally, I was talking about this, and they sat back and were just like in the background, and they were like, just nodding at me, like, so they couldn't see. It's like, yeah. It's like, so how we do that?
My wife would be nodding probably right now a little bit.
Yeah, we all of our partners are, right? Yeah. They're always right as well, these women. I don't know what it's about. It's funny, isn't it? But it's a very simple way, and this won't get taught anywhere else, more than likely, the way I'm going to describe this complicated thing and how to make it so simple, okay? So what I call an internal driver is the emotion. If we change the emotion inside of us, we literally change our beliefs, attitude, and the world that we see around us, okay? Sounds simple because it is. And this is how we take complicated things and make them practical and simple. So what do I mean by that? Well, think about it. If you're in a fearful state, for example, that bubble, right? How are you perceiving yourself, the world, the future, money, success, ambition? How are you, right? Your internal doubt, everything's a nightmare. That's the emotion that's in there. But how does the world look when you're feeling happy? Right? When you're feeling happy, everything's good. Well, that's funny, isn't it? Right? So,
and neither one are right?
Yeah, neither one are right. Nothing's right. Nothing's right or wrong. It's just what it is. But when we start to understand, we've got a filter in our brain, there's chemicals to change, there's patterns to change, all of these different things. But if we just literally on that drive home from work did something so simple and so stupid, but we played a funny piece of music, listened to a stupid podcast, or whatever it is that made us just smile and laugh, guess what? Changes. The software changes, the neurology changes, the state changes. And then suddenly we are now in a very different emotion, and the feeling's completely different, the world's completely different, and then we walk in the house, very different. If we start interrupting that pattern by asking, what are we thinking about? What are we saying to ourselves? What's the emotion right here, right now? We've caught and interrupted what's going on. Now we future pace our brain. So who do I need to be the best version of me in this next thing I'm about to do? Or whatever word you want to use. But that means now, I need to go and be dad, or I need to go and be husband or boyfriend, or I need to go and focus on this. That's who I need to be. Guess what? We've completely changed, right? So when we can understand that one very, very simple thing, but this is a thing that massively affects most entrepreneurs, and it causes chaos, because if your home life's chaos, then you're walking into the next day, guess what? In a chaos state. How's that affecting your business? Right. So this is where we change states again, routines, and all these other systems. Does that make sense? Does that answer the question?
It does. It totally makes sense. The anchoring thing totally does, and I like that better than the trigger, because triggers do, typically have that negative connotation. But it's still like they're connected. It's totally connected. And I mean, I can't, obviously, I'm sure everyone listening at whatever state will be nodding along, going whatever, but I can relate to that myself, like completely, like driving home and like, and I like to think as things go, I don't have the most, every day can be stressful, but not always the most stressful, but I am in that mode. And then I have like a 7-minute drive home. So I'm completely still anchored, like, but it makes total sense. It's total, that connective tissue of this state gets tied to that state, and you're not, you're not wired where you need to be to maximize that next experience, whether it's, like you said, wife, kids, whatever it is. That makes complete sense.
And if we understand even a little bit more, like we talk about, like you've got 7-minute drive home, right? So that's beautiful. 7 minutes is good. Some people just walk out, open the door, and they're like me, right? It's like, at least you got 7 minutes, dude. Yeah. But the truth behind that is, look at it like this, right? We activate something so primal in us, primal genetics, which is music. You know what I mean? By shifting music, guess what that does? Well, it's so primal, right? It's before we have verbal communication. So what happens is it like, imagine playing Rocky, Eye of the Tiger, right? On the way to work or on the way back. You might hate that tune, you might love that tune, but I don't care. You'll be singing along to that tune within about a minute and a half, right? And then, right? Oh, where's your focus gone? Where's your focus gone? Where's your filter system in your brain's shifted to? Right. You've suddenly got such a different emotion. We can keep going with anchoring. It's the same with networks. It's the same with money. It's the same with our environments. We'll keep talking about anchoring if you want, mate.
Yeah, let's do.
So talk about environmental anchoring. Environmental anchoring is such key. Even the colors, the sounds, the smells, everything in your environment. But look at it this way. I've had clients, and I didn't tell them to do this, but they did it. They've literally got rid of everything in their house and sold their house and started again. But why? Why? Right? Not because they just wanted to. They understood what was going on. Because we talk about anchoring, right? So that means every ornament, colors, pictures, paintings, everything in your home, if that was bought with an ex-partner, moment in your life, everything in that house is triggering, and I'm using that word deliberately, triggering you, right, to have a negative response, or feel down on ourselves, or remember those old memories, right, that keep lighting up and creating a new muscle or a chemical response, right? When we start to understand that, guess what? My client, he literally looked around everything. He goes, this is my ex. They live in this house. I didn't even want to live here. And then it's like sold everything, got rid of everything. That's how powerful like environmental anchoring can be. But if we take it, that's a negative aspect. When we take it in a positive aspect, right? There's a reason even in your cool office right now that you set it up with pictures on the wall, posters, even the colors of and designs of everything, right? That makes you think, feel, and act a very certain way. So every time you go in there, into that office, guess what's anchored? Well, guess what? A good feeling, hopefully, right? Yeah. A motivation feeling, a leadership role, right? An abundance frame, right? A belief in yourself, a focus, an expectation. That's every time you walk into that office. Now, with someone like yourself, and you've got a cool environment, the challenge with that is that becomes addictive also. Because you feel a certain way in there. Your life is a certain way. You are leading in there. Then you go home. Well, you're not leading anymore. Your wife's leading. Your girlfriend, right? End of the leadership. But you're still in that frame. So if we can start looking at our homes and creating environments like we want to feel like, it's the same with our office. How do we want it to feel like? Because remember, the emotion is the driver, and the driver dictates how we perceive the world or our state. So this has become so important, man. Like, people don't even understand how much damage this can do. Take it to another level. Why do you think casinos are designed a certain way? Right, it's not by accident, is it? You know what I mean?
No.
They're pumping oxygen in there for a reason. It becomes a maze for a reason. Everything looks the same for a reason, right? It makes you think, feel, and act a certain way. When you start to understand everything about this, you become brutal at getting rid of stuff, right? Just become stuff. You also become brutal at making sure that your environment's set up. So, for example, I'm British, mate. And so imagine a big stately manor house, okay, big old fashioned. And in one of their rooms, they're always going to have a big library, right? So you walk into that library, it's all those leather couches, rows and rows of books. There's a certain smell to it, you know what I mean? Even a temperature. What do you want to do in there?
You want to sit down and either take a nap or sit down and read a book.
That's it.
Relax.
Right. That's the point. So the environment has anchored the emotional response and action without you even knowing. So think about that when you're setting up teams and environments or whatever it is you're doing. Everything. You're going Apple. Apple makes you feel a certain way. Whether that's Steve Jobs has been anchored right through the whole of Apple products. So he made everybody think that they were futuristic, cool, you know what I mean, and was intelligent. But none of those things, Apple users aren't any of those things. Well, they might be, but maybe not, right? But using that product makes you feel a certain way. It's the same with how, nothing you don't know again, or anybody listening, but it's the same with advertisers, right? Why do they connect brands to brands or brands to celebrities? It's anchoring. So they make you feel and perceive yourself a certain way. But is that a bad thing? Could be. It could be a real bad thing.
This is like branding 101. I mean,
yeah, branding 101, man. But people don't really truly understand the psychological depth of what this really is behind it. They just always do this because it's cool, or we'll do that because it makes people feel that. Yeah, but when we really go deep into it, it creates an identity for them. And identity is not necessarily a good thing either. We want to be detached and all the rest of it. But let's talk about identity for a second. If it's identities connected to ego, that's a nightmare. If it's identity because you have to be perceived a certain way, so you get a certain role done, that's a different thing, right? So, but identity, like in every aspect, like with branding, again, you want them like a perfume label, right? Connecting it with Brad Pitt, that they want you to create or mirror neuron, which we can go into, mirror neuron or become Brad Pitt. They want you to think like Brad Pitt, believe like Brad Pitt, see the world like Brad Pitt. Probably aren't Brad Pitt, but you want to see the world like Brad Pitt.
Very few people are.
Very few people, mate. Well, there's one, it's Brad.
Yeah, I know.
But what does that mean? If we can trigger that identity, then does that mean that person suddenly got confidence about themselves and then stepped into a new environment or a meeting or a sales call, and suddenly they were that version, which means their tonality is going to be different. Their confidence is going to be different. The way they speak to that client is going to be different, right? So if we start to understand that, well, that's kind of cool. That's kind of cool, right? And that's the same with every area of life and every area of business. We have to become the versions of us that we know we truly need to be in the future to obtain the goal. We need to design that, and then we need to install it now. Because if we install it now, then what that means is we start to see the world that way now, which means suddenly that $20 million goal or whatever it is, well, you're already believing it's happening now, which means you're going to take certain action now. You're going to have certain communication now. You're going to have certain belief now. You're going to pull in a certain network now. All of that is a radical difference and shift in how business is done. Or don't do any of this and just go and read another book or go and take another tactical course, right? See the difference, right? Everyone's pitching tactical courses. They're important, they're huge, but it's only a piece of the jigsaw puzzle. At the highest level, it's like whether they use coaches or not or whatever, the obsession is internal growth.
So crew, there you go. Gotta love Ryan, right? That's the end of episode 329, and you've gotta love Ryan, right? He's got a much better podcast voice than me. I get it. But, you know, that's Ryan. So if you want to hear the rest of this interview, and I know you do, go over to the Rad Cast with Ryan Alford. I'm going to put in the links, going to put all Ryan's links to make sure that you connect with him. Very important for me to get into his world, because it's going to be our world together, right? And you're part of my world, so I want to look after you. But do you see the difference? Right, I don't share these interviews often. I possibly should share these interviews often. I've been on quite a few podcasts, as I say, like Entrepreneur on Fire and everything else over the years. And you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to start sharing cool episodes, cool interviews I've done. And speaking of cool things, head over to his thing, head over to my show notes, connect with Ryan, connect with me. Make sure that you're heading over to Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And guess what? Yeah. Probably need to do TikTok too, right? But anyway, Andy Murphy Mindset. Easy, right? Easy to connect. And speaking of connecting, make sure that you're getting your mornings dialed in, switched on, like the ultra high performers do. You can be one of them. And that's with the Fire Mind Morning Audio. It's going to drop you into alpha waves, tune your brain up, and make you perform at your best every single day. Be nice, wouldn't it? Yes, it would. Go there now, firemind.me, or head over to Andy Murphy online. Yeah, .online. And make sure you're getting the Total Control Blueprint before it jumps onto Amazon. But right now you can get it for free, so make sure you get grabbing that book too. Do you know what? I am pumped. I am so pumped, and you should be too, because we're in about to enter a whole new year, 2022. And we're in November right now, but you know what? It's on. Let's make this year your best year ever. Let's end this year with power. Let's start the next year kicking ass. And I want you to be a part of my world so I can help nurture you along the way. It's time. It's time to do things you've never done before. It's time to get past that hurdle. It's time to break that ceiling. It's time for you to live that dream, not just dream about that dream. And I want to help you do that, all of that. So it's time for you to step up any which way it is. But the first step is, let's have a chat. Let's connect with me. Hit those show notes up, everybody. Make sure you're connected with Ryan, myself. It's going to be fun times. It's fun times. And until the next time, you have an amazing week. Much, much love. And one more thing. Why don't you smile for me?
Thanks so much for listening to today's episode of the Mindset by Design podcast with your host and NLP expert, Andy Murphy. We'll catch you next time.